The following information is factual and undisputed. On November 14th, 2008, with the help of NASA, India became the fourth country to plant its flag on the moon by successfully landing the Chandrayaan-1, which would shock the scientific community by confirming that water did in fact exist on the lunar surface. On June 18, 2009, after the United States honored India with an award for scientific achievement for proving that water existed on the moon, NASA announced that it would be launching a bizarre lunar mission of their own in order to again attempt to prove the existence of water on the moon. While India's moon mission determined the presence of water by simply collecting minerals from the moon's surface, NASA chose a much more sinister plan, as they would launch a spacecraft to get close to the moon and then fire a missile at it. And on October 9th, 2009, that's exactly what our space program did. They bombed the moon.
This rocket weighs as much as an SUV, so we all like the moon, we look at it at night, but we are about to hit it twice with quite the double impact.
So Ryan, it has hit, and they have an infrared picture.
Shortly after this event, a document would surface that brought into question the moon bombing even more, as this previously classified document from the Department of Defense proves that on December 3rd, 1996, roughly 12 years before India's discovery, NASA had already confirmed that water was on the moon. Which begs two obvious questions. Was NASA lying about their reason for bombing the moon? And if so, who did we bomb? I don't remember the exact date, but it was a couple years ago. I was watching footage of the eclipse on CNN, and it hit me. It was a perfect circle. The moon could fit perfectly inside the sun, and I was like, wow, what a freaking amazing thing in nature. Almost too amazing. I don't know, it just hit me that maybe the moon isn't what we think it is. I've had crazier thoughts, but at that moment I decided I need to do some research on the moon, and specifically on the eclipse. And after researching all of this, as it turns out, the moon is exactly 400 times smaller than planet Earth and 400 times closer to the sun, creating a perfect circle of eclipse. Any bigger, any smaller, any closer or further away, and we would not have an eclipse with perfect dimensions. Not that I'm the most scientific-minded person in the world, but what I do know is that nowhere in nature does a perfect circle appear naturally. With that in mind, I asked myself, if the moon isn't just a giant rock that spins around us, then what is it? After looking into this some more, I was shocked to learn that many people believe that the moon is actually, are you ready for this? A fucking spaceship. Sound crazy? I thought so too. But I was even more shocked to learn that the individuals behind this theory are not some sci-fi enthusiast nutballs, they're not conspiracy junkies, and no, they're not Trekkies. The individuals that have come up with this theory are none other than the most accomplished scientific minds that the likes of NASA and MIT have ever known. And why do they think the moon could be a spaceship? Believe it or not, the theory is based on hard science and facts, starting with the fact that to this day, the scientific community has no clue how the moon came to exist, but also how it came to rest exactly where it's at. Chapter 1. This shit is whack. When it comes to the creation of the moon, two possibilities were initially submitted by scientists, which are the whack and double whack theories. What are these whack theories? Well, the whack theory states that during the Big Bang, a Mars-sized planet collided with planet Earth, breaking off a chunk of the Earth, which would later become our moon. But when scientists couldn't figure out how the moon would stop its trajectory and come to rest, after what would be an explosion of biblical proportions, the double whack theory was then presented, which stated that not only did a Mars-sized planet whack the shit out of planet Earth, thus creating the moon, but that newly created moon was hit again by another Mars-sized planet, which stopped it dead in its tracks, leaving the moon suspended in space, where it remains still today. But due to the fact that both theories defy not only basic laws of physics and mathematical probability, but also common sense, to this day, as I mentioned earlier, scientists have absolutely no idea how the moon came to exist. Chapter 2. The Devil in the Metal. If the moon were in fact a broken off piece of planet Earth, then common sense would dictate that the moon would be made of the same basic content as planet Earth. But when comparing soil and rock samples, scientists were shocked to learn that not only is the moon's composition completely unique, but they were even more puzzled by the fact that moon rocks contain uranium-236 and neptunium-237. Why is this puzzling? Because as of today, these elements have never been known to naturally exist on planet Earth or, to our knowledge, anywhere throughout the known universe. Uranium-236 is a long-lived byproduct of nuclear waste found in spent fuel rods, while Neptunium-237 is a byproduct of nuclear reactors. In addition to uranium and neptunium, moon rocks are also rich in titanium. In fact, there's 10 times more titanium in moon rocks than there is in any rock here on Earth. What do we use titanium for? Supersonic jets and space travel. Interesting, right? Supersonic jets and space travel. And last but not least, moon rocks also contain brass, which is a processed metal, meaning that you only get brass when you combine copper and zinc. So you tell me, who on the moon was making brass? In fact, when taking a closer look at the rock samples from the moon, Dr. Harold Urey, who won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, said the samples were mind-blowers and was specifically confused by the levels of titanium in the rock, as he had no explanation as to how so much titanium could naturally exist. Chapter 3. On November 24, 1967, the astronauts of Apollo 12 were returning home when they released their lunar module, which came crashing into the moon's surface with an impact of 1 ton of TNT. The results shocked NASA scientists as the moon began to reverberate with an intense resonation that lasted nearly an hour. This was followed by Apollo 13, in which, upon returning home on April 14, 1970, the 15-ton spent third stage of the Saturn V launch vehicle crashed into the moon with a force equivalent to 11.5 tons of TNT. It hit 85 miles west-northwest of the site where Apollo 12 astronauts had set up their seismometer. Scientists on Earth said the moon rang like a bell. Ken Johnson, the NASA supervisor of the Data and Photo Control Department, went on the record about the incident, stating that not only did the moon ring like a bell, but that the entire moon wobbled, in which Johnson stated it was almost like it had gigantic hydraulic damper struts inside of it. So what does this all mean? Well, according to Dr. Sean C. Solomon of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the data collected from both of these impacts indicated, and I quote, the frightening possibility that the moon may be hollow. In fact, Maurice Ewing, the NASA co-director of the seismic experiments, when speaking on the massive reverberations, said in a press conference, "As for the meaning of it all, I'd rather not make an interpretation right now, but it is as though someone had struck a bell, say, in a belfry of a church, a single blow, and found that the reverberations continued for 30 minutes.
As far out and crazy as it sounds to believe that the moon is possibly a spaceship, before you make your final judgment, there's something else you should take a closer look at. Something you've probably seen a million times, but if you're like me, you've never taken the time to actually study them. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the craters of the moon. Chapter 4. The Egg in the Shallows. If you take a look at this photo, you'll see something fascinating that researchers and scientists have pointed out, which is that regardless of the impact zone of each crater, all of the craters have a universal depth within a minute margin, in which believers of the lunar spaceship theory claim that this is due to an impregnable shell, as the moon was designed to withstand the impacts of heat and asteroids during travel. It's crazy, right? Not according to Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov of the Soviet Academy of Sciences. After Vasin and Sherbakov studied the moon's craters and considered the fact that titanium-rich moon rock was such a poor conductor of heat, both made the following statement. If a material had to be devised to protect a giant artificial satellite from the unfavorable effects of cosmic radiation and meteorite bombardment, the experts would probably have hit upon precisely these metals, and they're referring to titanium and brass. From an engineer's point of view, this spaceship of ages long past, which we call the moon, is superbly constructed. Chapter 5. Lunar Life and Crimes. Okay, are you still with me? Because what you just heard is beyond compelling, as countless brilliant scientific minds are telling us that the science, not theory, but the science, points to the fact that the moon could potentially be a spaceship. After I absorbed all of this, I thought to myself, if this is all true, then without a doubt, NASA and the space program absolutely know about all of this. I mean, what's next? Was NASA engaged in some conspiracy to keep us in the dark? Take a look at this and you decide. In 2001, at the Press Club in Washington, D.C., Sergeant Carl Wolf, a former CIA precision electronics and photographic engineer, crossed the line of secrecy, stepping forward to claim that while working for the CIA, not NASA, the CIA, he was asked to piece together a mosaic of photos of different lunar landscapes. Wolf claimed that the mosaic included everything from satellite dishes to power-generating plants, dome-shaped buildings, and specifically
mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers.
Something else you should know about was the Clementine mission. This was a photography mission in which NASA sent a satellite up to take nearly 2 million photos of the moon. And as these photos came back, they were actually posted on a feed. But what you could tell in countless photos is that before they hit the feed, somebody in NASA had got to them one by one and smudged out certain items that they didn't want the public to view. Which begs the obvious question, which is, if NASA's hiding something, why would they smudge the photos and then release them? Well, it's a perfect defense, right? Sometimes the best way to lie is to actually tell a ridiculous truth. So smudge them, then put them out there, then use the defense. Well, listen, if we were going to release photos with things on the moon, why would we smudge them and then put them out there? That's why. That's why you smudge them and then put them out there. Disinformation, the only way to really confuse things and make them have a high degree of doubt, tell the truth.
There's one last photo that I want you to look at, which was pointed out to the world by Joseph P. Skipper in 2004, in which a massive object is again blurred out as it sat at the base of this crater. In 2007, independent filmmaker and ufologist Jose Escamilla contacted Jim Horrocks, an imaging expert, to determine the size of the object in the photo. Horrocks determined that the object is 10 times the size of Los Angeles. But skeptics say it's just a mountainous area. The only problem with that theory is that a photo was taken by NASA and released online this year of the same exact location, in which the object, as you can see, is gone. So unless mountains can vanish, what you're looking at here is something large with mechanical ability, something that moved without life supposedly existing on the moon. Okay, so if there's activity on the moon, and if the moon is some spaceship, who are they and what are they doing? If you ask Dr. David Icke, who lectures throughout the world on the moon spaceship theory, according to ancient Zulu, Sumerian, and Iraqi scripture, the moon is a spaceship that was brought here by the race of gods, otherwise known as the Anunnaki. So who the hell are the Anunnaki? Well, there's a ton of different explanations as to who the Anunnaki actually are, as they appear in countless ancient legends, including the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian creation myth. Now, we can make an entire documentary about the Anunnaki, but for the sake of this documentary, what's important is that in countless religious tales, the presence of the Anunnaki as world creators or a race of deities does in fact exist. And specifically in Zulu lore, the Anunnaki came to the world in a spaceship which they identified as the moon. So is that possible? Is it possible that an alien race drove the spaceship moon to planet Earth in order to start mankind? And to this day, the spaceship is still active with life. And as crazy as all of this sounds, I am not the first person to suggest that something weird is going on with the moon. In fact, the list of people who agree with me is long and distinguished, starting with our astronauts, in which countless transmissions between astronauts and mission control during lunar missions have now leaked, confirming that astronauts have in fact had first-hand experience, first-hand sightings with UFOs. Check these out.
797 here, you listen to your read. Lots clear. 7, go ahead. I'll talk to you at 10 o'clock high. This is Houston. Say again, 7? I'll talk to you at 10 o'clock high. An object which is at the same place all the time but appears to be tumbling. Well, we've had it ever since yesterday. It just seems to be tagging along with us. Houston, this is Discovery. We still have the alien spacecraft under the turret. Go ahead. The best view we got was through the binoculars, and the best way I can describe it is there's some kind of reflective cloth or with a metallic-looking type of cloth of a structure that's definitely not rigid or it's not a solid metal structure. It started over window 8, then quickly moved towards the nose of the orbiter, and we tracked it through windows 1, 2, 3, 4, and now it's out. What about window 5? It's moving away.
So if these UFOs exist and are flying around the moon, then why isn't there footage of them today? Well, the answer is that there is footage of them. In fact, there's a ton of footage, as amateur astronomers and UFO enthusiasts around the world have been posting videos of unexplained objects flying around the moon for some time now. Videos like these. And while there will always be a degree of fakery and hoaxing, there are countless individuals who stand by their footage, claiming that the UFOs they've captured near or on the lunar surface are in fact real. Which begs another question. If these UFOs are flying around, where do they dock? Where do they park? Where do they go at night? Where are they stored? As if this whole story isn't crazy enough, in 2002, for a brief time period, Google Moon, a program with countless high-definition photos of the lunar surface, posted several pictures of the south pole of the moon, in which the web erupted, as these photos shows what appears to be a giant aperture that opens and closes, an aperture similar to the aperture on a camera. The only difference was the moon's aperture seemed to have massive light emanating inside out. And where was this aperture located? On the moon's south pole. Why is that important? Where do you think NASA fired both of their missiles into the moon? You guessed it, the moon's south pole.
Which brings us all the way back to October 9th, 2009. Why did NASA bomb the moon? I don't have an answer for you. I have no idea. I just made this whole documentary to tell you that I have no idea, which to me is honestly the best reason to make a documentary. Some films are made to illuminate a revolution, and some films are made to incite one. Something is going on. We did not bomb the moon to determine if there was water there. We knew there was water there from our own missions. We knew from India's mission. We knew. What did we bomb? I don't know. There are many groups you can join that are disclosure groups that want the truth out about aliens, want the truth out about the moon. At the very least, I hope this film makes you look into those groups and start formulating together and telling our government and our elected officials, many of which, like Fife Simon, can step forward saying, yes, the Phoenix Lights were real. There's a great movement going on right now to actually tell the truth about these things. I know we didn't hit the moon looking for water. Join me in trying to figure out why and trying to force the people that know.